This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Listen, I think it's important to admit one to another when we're wrong about something, especially when it's something important, and especially when it's something that may or may not alter how people who ostensibly respect you think about you. So, I don't know if I've ever talked about the Senate confirmation of Attorney General Bill Barr here in my videos. I know I did at some length on my podcast. And you see, I've never had tons of praise for him. I didn't lay out some defense for his eventual confirmation. What I did do, though, was downplay his role as a rabid defender of Donald Trump. I kind of downplayed the fears of many that he would assume his role and then blindly and shamefully run interference for the hateful, lawless, white nationalist rube in the White House. I was wrong to talk about him as a seemingly decent or honorable man who had deep respect for the country and the United States Department of Justice. I was absolutely wrong to assume he would put his country first. First over party, first over politics, and first over Donald Trump. I was wrong. And the moment that made me understand exactly how wrong I was a couple of days ago when Attorney General William Barr appeared before the United States Senate Appropriations Committee and asserted, without a shred of evidence or even a willingness to provide a scintilla of reasoning to back it up, said to the committee that he believes spying on the Trump campaign occurred in 2016.
During an election, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal. Generation I grew up in, which was the Vietnam War period, people were all concerned about spying on anti-war people and so forth by the government. And there were a lot of rules put in place to make sure that there's an adequate basis before our law enforcement agencies get involved in political surveillance. I'm not suggesting that those rules were violated, but I think it's important to look at that. And I'm not talking about the FBI necessarily, but intelligence agencies more broadly.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I don't. I guess you could. I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
Are those just the words of a man happy to be dragged from professional obscurity back into the action by a beleaguered and wildly unpopular president? Are those the words of a man who is so happy that same president gave his son a job in the White House that he's willing to throw away any semblance of good repute he may have once had? I think so. He is asserting in those idiotic, conspiracy-rich words that there may have been an underhanded reason to have initiated the investigation into Russian interference and a possible Trump connection therein. What this is fodder for Trump fools and MAGA mouth breathers. The investigation into Russian interference began only after Foreign Policy Advisor George Papadopoulos was drunkenly bragging to an Australian official. Also, Trump's other foreign policy advisor, Carter Page, had been suspected of being a Russian agent for a long while before Trump even announced his candidacy. And multiple Republican-appointed Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act judges approved warrants to conduct surveillance. This, by no stretch of any reasonable individual's mind, was some rogue spy operation. But surely, after making such an irresponsible and incendiary assertion in open committee session for the world, but more importantly for Donald Trump himself to hear, surely Bill Barr backed this conspiracy theory up with a little intellect, with a little professional reasoning, right? No. In fact, when asked what led him to his opinion, he pretty much told the Republican chairman to himself.
What is the basis for reaching that conclusion or a belief that something like that occurred? And what are the consequences for those who committed unauthorized surveillance?
Did you say that I said that it occurred?
You indicated, I think I tried to at least reflect on what your quote was, that you thought spying on a political campaign occurred in the course of an intelligence agency's investigation into Russian interference in 2016.
Well, I thought the question was, did I have any basis for saying?
And I'm now asking what the basis is or what the facts are that lead you to that thought.
Okay, I felt I am concerned about it, and I was asked about whether there was any basis for it, and I believe there is a basis for my concern, but I'm not going to discuss the basis.
Look, it's certainly not just me who has a problem with this naked foolishness from someone who is supposed to be impartial and independent from Donald Trump and his stupidity, his lies, and his conspiracy-driving political games. Conservative Jennifer Rubin wrote an op-ed calling for aggrieved members of the Justice Department to start speaking out to counter this nonsense. And Lawfare blog Benjamin Wittes wrote, quote, "It's a fair inference from Barr's comments that he was intentionally hinting that there was something rotten at the FBI in 2016. If he was not doing so, he's being foolish indeed not to anticipate that he would be pouring gasoline on a fire." Wittes notes that Barr slimed people today. He didn't name the group of people around former FBI Director James Comey, but when he described a failure among a group of leaders there in the upper echelon of the Bureau in connection with possible political spying on the Trump campaign, he was unsubtly referring to the very group of people about whom the president has been tweeting bile for months. And let me tell you, I agree wholeheartedly that the proper thing to do is not to dangle those questions in a congressional hearing in a fashion bound to stir up conspiracy theories. It is to find out the answers to those questions and take appropriate remedial action. But since when did anyone working for Donald Trump worry about what is proper? Bill Barr is a disgrace to his party, a disgrace to the Justice Department, and a disgrace to this country. And while I normally believe it to be right and noble to extend to people the benefit of the doubt, I wish I hadn't so freely given it to him however many months ago.